very welcome from my side. I'm Marie. I'm going to host this session today, which is about hacking high growth sales tactics to boost your growth. And I'm super happy to have with me here Jenny from Libsam, Felix from sennder, and also Raul from Project A. Thanks a lot for being here and sharing your experience with us today about exactly those tactics that you have in place to boost your growth. So very much looking forward to that panel discussion. Just one quick info before I hand over to the panel, which is about drop in all the questions you have. We will have a Q&A in the end. So I'm going to collect all the questions, and then in the end we will have that, so to say, fireside chat with the audience. All right. So then the stage is yours. There we go. Thanks.
Thank you, Marie. Hi, everyone. My name is Raul. I'm Director of Sales and Customer Success at Project A. I'm super happy to have with me Felix and Jenny. And since we already had a quick intro, I'll just hand over the word to them. So Jenny, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself so we understand who you are and what you do?
Awesome. So I'm Jenny. I'm a co-founder, co-CEO of Libsam, which is a people enablement SaaS, which means we combine tools for alignment like OKRs and meeting management, tools for people development, such as performance management, feedback, and also tools around employee engagement, such as surveys or learning. And we thereby enable companies or founders and C-level at companies like Spryker, like Crew, like Spotify to build and scale great companies. And I'm here part of this discussion today as I also still wear the hat of VP Sales. We're still recruiting for this role right now. And should I speak about our sales department briefly already, or should we do that a bit further down the...
Go ahead. Tell us a bit about it.
Just very briefly, maybe, because I think it's good for people to understand sort of the our perspective. Sales department right now is roughly 21 people across market research, SDRs, AEs, and then pod leads, as we split on the team into smaller pods. And CS, customer success, is a separate department, and our focus is more the small to mid market, not enterprise.
Thank you, Jenny. Felix,
right.
What about you?
I will take over. First of all, thanks for being here today. My name is Felix, 31 years old. I'm Senior Director Sales at sennder. Joined the company about 3 years ago. We are one of the companies where Project A is invested in. For what we do at sennder is basically connecting large enterprise customers with small carrier companies via our proprietary technology. In the current road freight market, you have a couple of challenges to overcome. There's like driver shortage, there's like a lot of empty freight room. And with our sennder technology, we are currently all across Europe with our 7 offices trying, or like on the path to basically solve these issues. When talking about the sales department, as Jenny just said, maybe I just add on to that. sennder by today has almost 1,000 employees. We launched the company in 2017. So our sales department is slightly bigger by now. Our commercial department, we have 80 commercial employees across the company, but same setup as Jenny said. We have basically a lead research department. We have an SDR department. We have acquisition account executives, which are basically the hunters to get new customers in. And then we have an expansion and key account management team once basically a deal is finally closed. And very happy to give you guys some insights today and have an open, fruitful discussion with Raul and Jenny.
Cool. So in motto of the knowledge conference today, let's see if we can find some dissent today, or if not, find some nuggets or hacks, as you want to call them, to accelerate your growth. And I'll start off with one general question, one scenario. If you met yourself 3 years ago and you could give yourself one advice or 2 advices, what would you tell yourself, Felix?
So I think one first very important advice is about what you should definitely don't do is like rushing into hiring. I think it's a general rule that you're approaching or having when you're starting a startup, when you're building a company, when you're evolving with headcount. You have to fill up positions, but don't fill up positions just because of the sake of filling up a position, right? So in the end, that means take your time. Rather wait another month or 2 months until you find the best suiting profile. How do we solve this at sennder? I would call it, we have the 10I or 12I principle. So this means like from the HR talent recruiter to the hiring manager to the supervisor, at least 3 interview rounds. And what we really like to do in sales or in commercial is also to have like a gathering with the team members, invite the people to the team, get them to know each other. Will that work also on a personal level? I think very, very important. It's not about only the skill set or the CV of a person, but also the relationship that, or like basically the power that a person will bring into a team. And lastly, big fan at sennder, we are also about case studies. So this means on the one hand, through like 3-4 interview rounds, you test it on a personal level, you ask a couple of questions, but then also basically let the person present a case study and see like how much time do they really invest into your case? Did they make an effort? Did they go a bit beyond what was requested? Because I think that gives you ideally a good insight in like what will really the person be. Last comment to it, why is that so crucial? When you hire a person, you onboard the person, you invest into that person. So you really want to get the most, I think, out of it. So this means better be really cautious about like who you get on board if you want to foster your growth. So this is definitely a don't rush into hiring people. Take your time and hire the right talent. How is it for you, Jenny? Is it do you share same don't, or do you have another one to spread?
I can certainly very much relate to that do or don't. So we're also very intentional on who we bring onto the team, and somewhat of a similar process of making sure we have a really thorough case study interview that is as closely related to the specific role as possible to really understand functional fit or expertise or functional potential. And then we have sort of as always our third interview, and it's maybe similar to the team gathering, you have a very thorough culture interview. So we have, as we're in the people enablement space, we have quite a lot of psychologists on the team. So they've really developed a very standardized sort of like questions on how we test for certain cultural parameters that are important to us, like growth mindset or resilience in the sales team. And we really deep dive into previous experiences of the person, how the person felt at the time, what they learned from it, to really get a good understanding of the culture fit. And I think so far that's been really, really good for us. So I can relate to everything you said. I think my learning in terms of do earlier, especially really thorough in hiring, like really make sure to build a thorough sales recruitment engine to actually get the quantity of sort of like conversation and talent inflow to be able to then sort of like fit the roles at the speed, at the quality you need. So I think this is something in retro or in hindsight, I would have probably started that a bit earlier to have that recruiter, that scalable sales recruitment engine to really fuel that high quality team growth.
Maybe there's an add-on to that. If as a company you build a budget upfront for the next year, don't do ad hoc hiring. Basically, do planned hiring. Don't react when it's too late and when you need people to both boost your growth, but basically look 6 to 12 months ahead, because otherwise it might be too late and you're running behind your targets. Maybe that is a mini add-on. When speaking maybe about do's, because it was now 2 don'ts, or like one big don't, I think what I learned when I was also looking 3 years back, and 3 years back, it's exactly when I joined sennder. We had a small sales team of 3 people doing basically everything end to end. And I think we continued doing that from when I started about 2 years. So it was like lead research, picking up the phone, dialing, getting onto the plane, onto the train, going to the customer meeting, close the deal, and then also doing the after sell. I think the word that I want to bring up here is accountability, because the better you basically define what a certain role should do in a sales team by splitting roles, the better you can hold in a positive way people accountable for their job. Because if you, just as one example, if you have one role combined, SDR and acquisition account executive, then you're asking the person, why didn't you close deals this week? And they say like, yeah, because I was outbound calling. So in the end, I wouldn't say it's excuses, but if basically a clear accountability for each individual role is given, to manage basically your end-to-end customer flow. Yeah, maybe that as a do. So go for accountability from the start as soon as it's possible. How do you guys do that, Jenny, at Libsam?
Yeah, and I think this is probably also one of my other central learnings. I am also a firm believer that end-to-end responsibility in a sales process in the early days is really something that accelerates learning, like having the same people qualify your leads and then also actually sell to them and close them. Maybe not onboarding them, or I mean, maybe even in the early days onboarding them, but maybe that's the first sort of like step to hand over into a dedicated responsibility or accountability. But I think in hindsight, this is actually something that's building up a really dedicated sales development team and keeping that separate from your account executive team that really sort of like moves deals through the sales funnel, through the pipeline. I think this is something in retrospect that I would have introduced that slightly further sort of specification and focus a bit earlier than we did. So we have now been building that up. We're still in the process of like really fully rolling that out. And I think it's probably something in hindsight that I would have probably maybe even started at like 1 million ARR, or at the latest have it going when you're like past like the 5 million, 6 million ARR threshold.
Maybe from a different perspective, but if I think of myself 3 years ago, the one thing that I would have told myself or tried myself to understand is really the vast differences between every sales company and every sales department. And the conclusion from that is that you have to experiment as early as possible with finding out your own truths as a sales company. And that benchmarks and whatever studies you can find, they're nice as a starting point, but they're typically not as useful as anybody hopes they could be. And so as early as possible, whoever wants to help that company or is in that company needs to put in the work to actually find out truths about the funnel, about the process that are specific to that company, and find the specific sales stack that is needed. And there's no one formula that fits all. I think that's the biggest learning at that time.
Fully agreed. I think it's a lot about. I think it's a lot about trial and error, right? And this is also as an advice, don't be afraid to try things, even if they fail at the end, because if you just putting your train onto this one rail and you believe this rail is the exact right one, you might fail because it's the wrong rail, right? So therefore, never be afraid to try something, even if you notice after a couple of weeks or 1 or 2 months, it didn't work out, then change back again, right? Because you had the version that you've been working on before. I think very important here is to always involve the people that you work with, that you manage. So don't do it basically on their back or behind their back, but basically inform them about it, that a change is coming, and then get them into the boat. Otherwise, change won't work.
So a lot of agreement here right now.
Yeah.
I'm seeing, but maybe I can poke this a bit and see. Is there anything that you disagreed with that is common knowledge in the sales area, or that you've heard today or somewhere else that everybody thinks?
I mean, Raul, maybe actually to your last point, I would actually phrase that. I mean, that's also dissent. I would phrase that much further and would say having like learning as part of the DNA of your company in every single part of like, not just in sales, but in really very much every department, and making sure you have really thorough learning culture and DNA at the individual, but also the organizational level, I think is ultimately what makes or breaks a successful company and these days. And it's ultimately like, how do you ensure that I think through hiring, you have like people with a growth mindset, salespeople with a growth mindset. They're not just executors in our case, like they're very much also very deeply involved in challenging everything we do and building the business with us. So, which I think ultimately might have been a different perception where salespeople pretty much just execute a process you give them. So I think having that learning culture at the DNA of every individual, but then also making sure we have really thorough processes in place to build challenging process, experiments, learning into every stage of how we act as a company, how we do processes, I think is ultimately incredibly important, and ultimately makes the success of the company. The way we do that to maybe make it a bit more talgible, it's like one of our values is challenge the status quo. We do a value onboarding with all new hires, like in the first week, where we basically talk about how we developed our values, but then also really give people that ownership of like, you're not invited to dissent, like it's your obligation to dissent, to ultimately have everyone's eyes and minds open to figure out like, what do we not do yet, and also making people aware that everything we do, we can challenge, right? Just because we do something a certain way doesn't mean we have to do it that way tomorrow, or just because it worked yesterday doesn't mean it's going to work like the next weeks. So just building that learning DNA and the essence of like everything you do as a company, including the sales department. I think this is probably the scope at which I would define learning as possible, as important for a company right now.
Yeah, maybe adding on my end, where I don't disagree when it comes to sales or the sense is like, I think how sales is being perceived is wrong often. Like externally, maybe also internally in the company, but also by the salespeople itself. What do I mean with that? Sales is not only talking. This is what people inside and externally in the company understand, but also the B2B sales guy itself. So first of all, it's not about like you don't need just like a great talker who can go to a customer and pitch a presentation. This is it. I think especially when we're talking about B2B sales, it is super crucial that the salesperson has a 360-degree view about the entire company setup, understand the product by heart, understand why departments work, which way, to also have a top expectation management towards the customer. So this means what I'm up to say is like it's not only a talking role, it's a very highly strategic role, but the salesperson itself has to basically live that role, because what a salesperson also has to understand is like the job doesn't finish when the deal is closed. The job finishes when the customer is happy, when there is really a customer success behind it, when each department, after, let's say, the handover, for example, understood, okay, this is our new customer, this is what they're looking for, this is the performance level they're expecting, etc., and basically really taking care and not just hunting for the next shot, but basically also taking care of the customers, not only talking, but being a strategic counterpart to the customer and the counterpart to all the people involved internally in the company. I think it's a very crucial part.
I actually agree with your disagreement, Felix, and I would like to add just one more perspective. And I don't know if anybody's read that. It's The Way of the Wolf, the book by Jordan Belfort, the guy who was pictured in Wolf of Wall Street. He's actually written some good sales books, and his one system is called the straight line system. And that's basically his definition of what a salesperson is, and I agree with that a lot, which is there is a process that a prospect takes through the sales funnel. And it can go different ways, and you're trying, of course, to put them through in one straight line. And the job of a salesperson is to take that prospect by the hand and push them through that process as fast as possible, which is a bit different from just saying something and dropping the ball and putting it in the customer's court, because it's never the customer's responsibility to put you through the process, but it's the salesperson's responsibility. So they need to come up with different ways to accelerate the going through the funnel, being closed, lost, or closed won. But their responsibility is taking the customer by the hand and getting them through the funnel as efficiently as possible. And I think that's a bit of a shift.
I think it's a topic of ownership, right? And I can clearly see with like I'm doing sales management now for 6-7 years and was managing 4 different sales teams. And what I noticed was the more ownership a salesperson is taking, the bigger the deal size also is getting. Yeah, so the more precise, the more strategic, the more ownership, the more commitment towards the customer and the company a salesperson is investing, the better the outcome, the more happy the customer. It's words, but it's truth, and it has to be lived. And I'm trying to also teach this to our guys and girls every single day, and we can really see a difference in performance also here. Yeah.
I think it's interesting then if we have that perception, obviously, that it's the sales rep's responsibility to guide someone through that process. Like, what do we need to do on the sales leadership side to actually make that job as easy and seamless and effective as possible? And I would actually love to hear sort of like, Felix, what some of your hacks are there, and also happy to share some of our hacks.
Yeah, sure. I think as you said before, Jenny, I think it's I love this metaphor of like the rail, right? So I think from management or like also supporting departments, we have, for example, sales operations, which are taking care of processes and analytics. It's really important to build, first of all, an environment where also a salesperson can operate in. I think here it's crucial that you also involve the salespeople to create this environment. This is, I would say, all a don't, in the sense of like, don't build processes without basically asking the people that are working on these processes. Yeah, it's the same as like accounting for product. In product, don't build a product that the customer doesn't need, right? So it has to be always an exchange. So I would say, first of all, build an environment with the input of the people that they can work and can sell. Secondly, I think it is very crucial to give them obviously training sessions, to be there, to hear them, to also understand why do deals not cross the finish line. I think here, and this is also a thing, sales is again not only about talking, it's a very data-driven game from my point of view. So this means look into data, collect as much data as possible, look into conversion rates, understand why do we schedule so many meetings with the SDRs, but why is the outcome from the acquisition account executives after meetings comparably low? Do we have to get into that stream and understand how to work on it? So this means it's not only about like managing outcome KPIs, and this is like, okay, what's your revenue? What's the margin? How many customers did you close? But basically also accelerate and facilitate and help the people to basically get better by trainings with data and by building a great environment. I think last but not least, be a great manager, be a good manager. I think we are spending 70% of our time from Monday to Friday in the office or in the home office. And be there for your people, like have an open ear, understand them. Also, I do this, I love to do this after working hours, to call one of the guys and ask them, hey, how are you doing? And give them the feeling that you care. But by giving them the feeling that you care, be real. I don't like people who change at work and be at home someone else. So I think the realer you are at work, the more people understand that you mean it, and the better they also follow you. So be yourself, build them a great environment with processes, look into data, and help them if they can't succeed, and then build a program also to help them grow again, and develop skills. Yeah, would be my answer to that, Jenny. I hope that helped a little bit. Do you guys do the same, or would you agree or disagree to that?
No, I think we're very aligned there. Maybe to actually make it even more tangible for maybe some people watching this today, like how exactly are we also sort of achieving a lot of what you've said? Mm-hmm. And I think something that maybe 3 tangible things that come to my mind is, first of all, I think something that's been an incredibly beneficial exercise for us is to really map down the KPI tree and the mechanics behind our entire business, like beyond sales, and really understand like what are our most important metric, like what are the most top 3 metrics feeding into that, and then like breaking that down, like what are the 3 top metrics feeding into that again. And I think that really helps. And I think SaaS is a very mechanical business to some extent. Like there's certain triggers and levers you can identify to like really do that exercise with your leadership team to map out this KPI tree from your business, and then making sure we have the data points in place to really also have like up-to-date, correct, insightful data and all sort of like drivers and levers behind our KPI tree. And I think this really is also helpful to give sales leadership, but also like your sales team guidance on what are sort of like the top KPIs to look for and what ultimately really like moves the needle. So I think KPI tree exercise, I think, is something that's helpful for any company, but also for every sales team to have that really top of mind and not get lost in all like different KPIs, but have a focus on the right ones. And then I think the second one, I mean, we're really a really process-driven company. Like both founders are economists, so we are just like, I think you learn and breathe process to some extent. I mean, it doesn't mean it's like bureaucratic, but I think it's just like we try to do repeatable things and then learn from it and tweak it. And I think something that's been really effective for us in terms of tweaking processes with the insights of the team and just making them work in the best possible way for the sales team is we collect frictions on an ongoing way. So we have like the similar way how you might have like a feature request report or a bug report. We have a sales process friction report in Notion, where basically any sales rep can report any kind of friction. It might be something small, it might be something bigger. Like this kind of the process doesn't work for me. And so we collect these frictions on an ongoing basis. We remind people if they sort of like complain about something, like please just, write a really quick friction down. And then we constantly, on a regular basis or tenure, we look at both the impact and the effort to fix them. And we basically always at least look at them on a quarterly basis when we go into OKRs. We also do an OKR survey where we ask the entire sales team, like, what works, what do you need from CS, what do you need from marketing, what do you need in terms of sales process iterations. And then we have sort of like the quarterly survey, plus we have the ongoing frictions, and we can really focus on fixing, iterating, leveling up the parts of the sales process or the organizations that ultimately we believe have the highest impact. And that really brings like a lot of focus on improving everything. And I think that would be, apart from KPI tree, friction reporting and really thorough OKR survey, sort of the second lever for me to really optimize the sales organization. And I think the third one for us actually is we hire quite a lot of people, and this might be different for you folks as you focus more on enterprise, but for our sort of small to mid-market, which is like 20% enterprise business, hiring graduates and then training them in our process and our methodology, like all the way sort of like from the beginning, actually works really well. And as the sales talent market is so competitive, that's also like a great way of actually getting really smart people, training them, making them really effective in our process, and like really having them as great sales talent. I don't know how you hire, or if that's something we've also done, or.
No, like first of all, agreed with like these surveys and stuff. We also do that from our sales operations department. We like, hey, we implemented that. What is missing? How do you like that new process? So obviously, we also have that in place, just to get that straight. When it comes to hiring, we do it. We have to do it a bit differently because, as you completely correctly said, we're focusing on large enterprise customers, which have usually like huge procurement departments, and we are really much focusing on commercial and hiring people with a certain background. So our business is in logistics, so with preference we're hiring logistics background people which have like a bunch of experience, 5 to 10 years. What we also like is like to hire people from the let's say from the normal corporate logistics world, and retraining them when they're coming to sennder on like, okay, it's great that you're coming like from that player, but like this is how we do it differently, but that they can basically help us also with their knowledge, make our company and our processes basically better. So basically collecting from the old economy logistics business and bring it into sennder. 6 questions from the audience. Okay, good.
Oh, we have 6 questions. Okay. I just have, Jenny, you said something interesting about a graduate program there. And I actually also have a graduate program at Project A, which we help our ventures with. One of our graduates is actually at sennder right now. And one thing that I often see is with graduates, at least I went to a business school, and the business school I went with is high in the rankings and everything. It's supposed to be a good business school. I think I didn't hear the word sales more than 5 times in my entire master's studies, which is a disaster for people who you want to hire now from those universities, and they don't even know that sales exists and that sales is actually strategically relevant, and it could open some futures for them and it can give them possibilities. And so it's becoming a bit better, but I often have trouble explaining to people that this is actually something that smart people can and should sometimes choose as a career. And so I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that, because I manage sometimes to do it and sometimes I don't, and when I don't, I'm really sad. So what do you think about that, Jenny?
I think that's actually, I mean, I also went to business school, and it's just ridiculous how little sales is sort of like part of the conversation there. So I think we all have a role as sales leaders to actually also change the notion, especially in Germany, around sales, because people are just afraid of doing sales. And actually we did a little hack when it comes to the graduate program. So it's actually the Future of Work Libsam graduate program. And then there's a sales and a CS track. So people might not actually be looking for like a sales graduate program, but I think Future of Work is a fairly sexy topic for quite a few people. So we actually sort of like gain the initial interest by coming very much via this specific topic. And then we obviously need to educate and figure out, like, is this person someone who's actually fit for a sales or for a CS track? And it's actually something that's going quite successful, to the extent that we had to find another like process or mechanism to actually deal with the amount of applications we get, because it's like graduate level applications. So often there isn't even so much like data points you can use to evaluate if that's a good fit or not. So we have actually paired our graduate program application with a video challenge. So we're doing video applications for those to actually have a fast sort of like initial data point. Is this someone who want to invite into like an interview process, or do we not believe this is a fit? And I think there's a second element that you said that I think is also something that's really interesting. And you said like hiring people from business schools, right? And we also hire a lot of like business school graduates or psychologists. And a lot of people are just really ambitious, right? So they also want to proceed in their careers really fast. So what we also have done is we've actually leveled sort of sales careers throughout Libsam. So there's 8 or 9 levels, and you have that element of fast progression. There's always a new role for you. There's always a new responsibility, a new target, a new package, a new tier of customers. So I think we not only need to think about how do we get amazing, good graduates, and how do we train them, how do we onboard them fast, how we develop them, but also like how do we keep them engaged by actually having yet the next exciting challenge ahead for them. So I think there's a lot of interesting things that can be engineered and built there.
I think Maria is looking at the clock, and we want to take some time to go through the questions as well. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, it's super insightful. And I think like also the audience, like I said, like really wanted to thank you for those great insights. We received actually quite a lot of questions, and also quite a lot of questions regarding the hiring that you were talking about. So I quickly want to jump in the first one, which is actually from Robert, who was asking, do you have any advice on how to go about finding excellent SDRs? Like he's really like asking for SDRs exactly. Is there some advice? Yeah, that you can share.
Go approach Raul from Project A and ask him whether he has some in his academy. And no, we made a very good experience now with Project A, to be fairly honest, without promoting them. But they have this SDR academy running, and we have currently one in our SDR team. He's doing a great job, coming from a business school, is progressing or will progress in his career. So that's a good funnel. On the other hand, I think with SDRs, it's you can hire almost any kind of person who would like to learn sales, I would say. So that from my point of view, there is not really like a big prerequisite. It's great for graduates. It's great for people who would like to learn sales, who are basically open-minded, who are good in talking, and who basically want to do the first steps. So this means I think there is not, like, from my point of view, like this one persona that you should look for, but more like an open-minded person who is a graduate who would like to learn sales. And we are currently recruiting the most. We get a lot of inbound applications also, but on the other hand, we are recruiting mainly on LinkedIn and looking for these young graduate profiles who would like to learn sales. Yes.
Thank you, Robert. Hope that helped a bit and shedded some light on that. Moving on with another question, which is addressed to you, Jenny, about also like the hiring of the graduates, which is about how long does the onboarding process take with the new talent, what you told us, like with those new graduates, and what's your secret to success here?
I mean, I think, so the graduate program in itself for us is like a 1-year program. So you start off in a more sales development oriented role, and there the onboarding actually happens fairly fast. I mean, I think one success factor for us is having a really well laid out onboarding, like very clear, like people arrive to Libsam and they have a very specific like onboarding meetings already as part of their agenda, like their calendar. Some of them are sales related. Some of them are understanding everything else that's going on in the company, like being onboarded to culture, but also understanding the objectives of marketing, of CS, of product roadmap, and so on. So giving them a good, thorough understanding of the broader context, but then also getting them doing on their specific job fairly quickly. And then we train people in an ongoing way. So there is, I mean, certain trainings as part of onboarding, but the Sales Academy in particular runs on like a bi-weekly, either small workshop that we run internally or a bigger workshop where we bring in external trainers. So like the learning is an ongoing process throughout the year. And we not only train people in sales methodology, we actually also train more personal development skills. I think some of them are really actually relevant for sales, like active listening. I think it's important for customer facing roles in particular. It's probably also like a really good life hack to be good with active listening. So that's sort of like a part from the Sales Academy of the personal development stream. And then we actually have a future of work stream. So we teach people the concepts of sort of behind what we do and what our customers care about. So the learning and the onboarding never ends throughout the first year, and then people can move on into an AE role post the first year. So there's a fast transition to the next level.
All right. Super interesting. Thank you, Jenny, for sharing that. Wanted to go on, like, because there are so many questions here with another one, maybe not really like addressing that hiring topic, which is a question from Jose. He's asking, the sales team is client focused. However, the rest of the departments are not. And they tend to create challenges for smooth processes to help the customer. So how do you get the other departments to join in the customer focus mindset? Jenny, Felix.
Maybe I can start, Jenny, and you add on if you like. I think it's important to spread across the company a commercial-driven mindset. So this is what it's about. And how can you do that? I think you can do this with different levers. On the one hand, inviting the operations people or the people who are basically executing the account once the sale is done, also to sales pitches, to make them understand how is the sales pitch going, what is really being sold, what expectation management is the department basically spreading. On the other hand, that's also vice versa. I think it's very important that the salespeople go into operations and understand what the operations are actually doing. Yeah, and a lot of companies, you have the problem that you work in islands. And the one island doesn't understand how basically the other island functions. So therefore, let them participate in the daily works or in the pitch. Secondly, what I like to do, and I do this on a 3-month basis, is to basically also pitch our current pitch and explain what we're currently doing, what we're developing, and what our customers are, what the needs are, how the market is basically being circulating and developing to the operations people, so that they are up to date, that they know what are the current challenges that our customers are facing. And lastly, giving them also just like a very structured commercial training. And because the commercial part should not stop once operations starts, right? So therefore that they also, when they are, so to give you an example, at sennder, when we basically close a deal, this means like, I don't know, 10 trucks are being executed per day, and the operations team takes over. And they're not talking to the same people that the salespeople were talking to. We are talking to the procurement guys, but they're talking to the operation guys. But this is also our customer. So this means the same story and the same experience basically has to be translated into operations and into the relationship between the operations department. So therefore, I think a commercial training is very crucial to do this, obviously on a frequent basis, especially when you grow a company like ours, because you have often a lot of new people joining so that they're up to speed.
I would just strongly second that everybody in the company, if possible, in a small company, should during the onboarding do 1 day of sales or 1 week or something. And that will solve a lot of problems very quickly.
Agreed.
Great. All right. So just maybe a quick one, and maybe then Jen, you can take that one because then we're almost done, running out of time. Which is a question: when do you introduce SOPs or RevOps, and what is the ratio for client-facing roles?
And we introduced, we call it actually StratOps, which has RevOps and also sort of like taking care of some other strategic projects. We introduced that this summer before we actually had entrepreneurs in residence taking care of something like sales op and strategic projects. And I think it's something, having a team that looks at processes, at data, at sort of like tweaking the engine across sort of like marketing, sales, CS, maybe even like product data, I think is something that is a really strong accelerator for companies. I think this is actually a company question where I feel like Felix, with a much bigger organization, might actually have really interesting insights to add.
We have a commercial SMP. Okay, time is over.
I'm so sorry.
We have a commercial SMP team having 15 people, building processes, analytics, especially important. We have 7 different offices and streamlining the processes between the offices. You can't start with it.
No, you're gone, Felix. Now we have you back.
No, it's gone.
All right.
Sorry.
I think like there are so many questions here. So people feel free to connect with Jenny, with Felix, with Raul. And I just want to say thank you so much. Pleasure to have you here. And yeah, looking forward to more discussions about this topic. Thank you so much.